Hi everyone, this is Abdullah Zarour. I'm from Oracle MySQL, Principal Solution Engineer. Today, we are going to talk about MySQL HeatWave, uh, a service that experienced incremental momentum today. And we will help you how you can do the migration from Azure-based MySQL to, uh, to the MySQL HeatWave. So, as you know, this is a series of learning dedicated for customers and OCI. So if you missed the previous sessions, we have the link on-demand sessions where you can watch them to go through the series, because this session is just a continuous session on the how to migrate from other cloud like Azure to the MySQL HeatWave in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Now, the prerequisite when you want to do the migrations from Azure to the Oracle Cloud using MySQL HeatWave, there are three main tools that you need them. The first one is MySQL Shell. I will deep dive on the MySQL Shell tool, the benefits, how to use it, the commands that need to be run in order to have a successful migrations. Then you need to have the Oracle CLI configuration file, which need to be used when you run the dump backup to the our object storage, or let's say where you will store your data. Then you can also need to check your policy on the service. Do you have the rights policy? Do you have the right privileges to run and execute the backup and operate the service in OCI? So this is prerequisites, mandatory tools that you need to have it before you start doing the real migration. Now, to give you some terminology between the Azure and the Oracle Cloud in terms of MySQL deployment model. In Azure side, you can see there are two kinds of deployment, single server and flex server. On our side, in Oracle Cloud, you will see that we have three kinds of deployment: standalone deployment, we have the HA as a service deployment, and we have our HeatWave uh, technology, which run on the OCI with the more capabilities compared to others offering an OCI. Now, in general, when you look in Azure, you have region. In OCI, you have the same concept. When you have a business zone in Azure, we call it a variable domain. So in OCI, when you have a region, on this region might be a local data center or local location. In minimum, you will have one available domain, which is a one data center, let's say on in simple terms, and you will have a threefold domain on one single AD. So this is in every Oracle Cloud deployment. You will have a region, then you will have a domain, then when you have the full domains. So the concept is almost same, but the way of implementation is different. Now, let me give you a brief about the HeatWave service today in OCI. As I mentioned, we have a three kind of deployment model. So it's very important when you want to decide to move is to understand the differentiation and the capabilities of different model that we have for the MySQL HeatWave. We have the standalone, which is perfectly fine for staging, testing environment, doing some development. If you are looking for a production workload, you can go with the high ability, or if you have a heavy workload where you need to do analytics, where you need to do um, uh, machine learning built in a single unified database, you can have also MySQL HeatWave available for you. All these offering, all these models of the database, they are fully managed. So in terms of patching, updating, the latest updates, security update, this is all available for you. Now, this is also include the support Premier for the MySQL services. So these are all include. The HA, it's of course will give you more uptime with a SLA for zero data loss when you do the high ability deployment. Of course, with the automatic failover, it's deployed in different way. It's either in the fault domains or it's in the across availability domains. In the HeatWave side, you can see that it's 3-in-1. So you can use it as online transaction processing. So if you have applications, e-commerce systems, it's just want to do all TB, they can use it. You can do analytics as well. And recently, we add built-in machine learning functionality inside MySQL HeatWave system. So this is just a brief about these services in OCI. Let's move on and look what we want today to achieve and the output of our architect. So today we have Azure region and we have OCI region. So you can have the same applicable to different region. I'm using my region. I'm based in UE, so I'm trying to use my region here. So in OCI, we have the service. It's called MySQL HeatWave. Then we have the object storage, and then I have a compute server. You can call it. You can see I have a compute server here, and on the Azure side we have the Azure MySQL database, which assign the public IP. I already configured the firewalls between these servers, so I can easily dump the data. The ultimate goal is to dump the data from the Azure side to the object storage side, then load back the data to the HeatWave system. There is a steps, there is recommendations, there is some tools that help you, some primary tools actually we use to do these transitions as smooth as possible. Now, for your information, always there will be many tools today available for you to do the migrations. You can use Dumbar, MySQL Dump. These are, let's say, different tools. But the primary tools today that we use when you work with the MySQL HeatWave is MySQL Shell. MySQL Shell, it's a new tool that's integrated fully with the OCI, where you can use it to read MySQL source systems and dump it to the OCI with a minimum efforts and with a lot of built-in functionality that help you to move easily without breaking the applications and also securely move the data. The first thing to consider when you move is always use MySQL Shell. Please download the shell. It's a free tool. It's have a lot of capabilities, which I will show you on the coming slide, how you will use it, how you will connect and run the logical backup or the dump backup for your system. Then the second step is always to check the compatibility, because on the OCI side, we offer MySQL HeatWave with the latest version of MySQL system. So today we have 8.28, 29. In Azure side, you have 5.7 and you have version 8. So if you are moving from 5.7, we need to check the compatibility. If you are moving from 8, it will be just easy of movement. The third point is to check the database size. So if you have a large data, let's say 1 tera of data, the MySQL shell tool have a capability to do a chunk of dumping the data and loading data back. So it's kind of how you will dump the data if you have large set of tables with a huge number of rows. We can use something is called chunks on the shell tool. Of course, there is another consideration on the database size, um, how you want to dump the whole system, or you want to dump selected tables, the schema. So all this kind of considerations are fit by using MySQL shell. Now, the last one is communications. We know that in Azure side, we have 11 interconnectivity with the OCI in Azure, or you can have the OpenVPN as well to do the secure connections. Now, by default, because we are dumping to the object storage over HTTPS, so the dumping is it's quite fast and it's quite also secure. And when you move the data. Now, this is the tools where you can have it downloaded. I'm using the latest shell tool, version 8.29. These tools have three kind of language: SQL, Python, JavaScript. It can easily move from 5.7 to the 8, all built in within the tool. So you didn't have to rely on the external tools. And it's very fast because it's run on multi-thread parallel deployment. Migrating from Azure to the MySQL HeatWave system. How we are going to do the migrations? This is the question, this is the concern today. There are two kind of steps here. Part one is to prepare, and part two is to run the actual migrations. So remember, preparation is mandatory and it will save a lot of time, especially when you want to troubleshoot things. So preparation, it's important part. After the preparation, you can easily run the actual migrations. So the first one is to create a compute machines, and you can have this compute machine OCI, or you can have it on Azure side. Then install the shell. Then you create the object storage, the repository where we will store the data. Then we need to create the config file, which will allow us to access the securely the object storage in OCI. Optionally, if you still not create the MySQL HeatWave systems, so you can go and create the HeatWave system as well. Now, run the migrations. We check the source. We make sure everything is corrected in terms of recommendations. Then we go ahead and run the HeatWave systems. Now, the first step in preparation is to log into the OCI. In OCI menu, you will find there is a compute, and you will find there is an instance, and there is a compute, create compute. Now, I'm just giving you an example here. You can use the new ARM-based processor. It's a free eligible, so you need pay on that, because this is just a dumping data. It's intermediate server to read from Azure and store data on the offshore. It's just like you are doing a jumping server. So you can use the eligible free servers, and you need to add your SSH keys, the public keys. You can either add your public keys, or you can download the public keys from the OCI. Then you need to connect to the compute machines. Then you need to install the MySQL shell tool. You can see that this is the command sudo yum install MySQL shell. It will install the latest version of MySQL shell. We prefer to use Oracle Linux, but it's also available on all platforms, the shell tool. You can download it from MySQL site and install it in Windows platform as well. Once you are ready with the installations, you can easily connect using MySQL as such and MDS, which is the MySQL database service, user HeatWave, and the import from your site. So this is how easy you can create the first step. Prepare the machine to host and to use as intermediate server. Step 3 to 4 is to create the bucket. The bucket is just a storage where you store your data on the OCI. It's in a secure way. In unlimited data, you can store as much as you want. And then you create the holder, which is called in my demo, it's called Azure MySQL dump. And I'm using the standard tier. There is archive tier, but the default is a standard tier, which will work fine with you. Two things to remember is the namespace and the bucket name, because we will use them when we run the MySQL dump data. It's very important to remember these names, the namespace and the bucket name when you create the bucket in OCI. If you are running this on not in OCI or in Azure side, if you have a compute in the Azure side, you can create the generate the SSE key and the public key in a way that the object storage can understand the communications, because we need this public key and a private key to access the object storage. The last point is to create the config file. We need this config file, and these are samples of config file. This is very important. When you want to access the OCI resources and the object storage and to communicate and active with the service, you need to specify the user, the region, and the Tennessee ID, the key file, which is the private file, and the key fingers. When you upload this here, you will get the fingerprint. So these are important parameters. Either the file is placed on OCI side, on the compute machine, or on the Azure VM machines. So this is a step is important, so that we will use this config file to access the object storage in order to dump the data. Now, this is the last point, which is the step 5. It's optionally, if you haven't still did not create the service, you just go to the database service, click on the MySQL servers, and just fill the steps: create, name, password, network, choose your network, hardware, config, and create. And this is where you can just pick the HeatWave systems. Now, run the migration. This is the actual migrations. So everything is prepared. We are ready to run the actual migrations commands. The first step is to connect to the Azure system, the MySQL Azure. Then you need to run something that's called check for server upgrade. This is a step where it will report to you almost a 25 checklist to make sure you are compatible to load the data from 5.7 to the version 8. And I'm just giving you a sample where I did the demo. You can see in the Azure side, they are using MySQL community server. In our side, we are using MySQL Enterprise, which is a fully managed service for the an OCI. Now, there's another option where you can have the output in a JSON format. I'm giving you another example where you can have it in a JSON format. Once you have this output, you can see no issues, some warning. Just give attention to the errors. If you don't have errors, mean that you can move to the MySQL HeatWave. Even if you have a warning, you still can adjust them and fix them later on. But errors, you have to fix the errors if you get any errors on this output. The most things here to mention is the default mechanism authentication in MySQL version 8 has been changed compared to the old versions, which is 5.7. And the character set. We are using the latest character set on MySQL database service. And on the older versions, they are using the MB3. So we are using MB4 now in the OCI HeatWave. The step 3 is to dump the instance. We have checked the configurations. We fix all the recommendation and considerations, the output. It can give you a 25 checklists. You go through them, you fix one by one. Then you need to dump the data to the object storage. Now, this is the very simple command. And these are the parameters, which is I explain them one by one. OCI bucket name is the one that I told you about. You need to have it. And the namespace. These are the mandatory. OCI MDS, when we make it true, we are checking the compatibility of your data and the table structure with the MySQL HeatWave. And these are strips, restricted grants, skip invalid accounts. These are used in the compatibility part to make sure when you load the data, you don't get errors or you are, it's a managed service. So there are some unused privileges allowed in the MySQL HeatWave. So this is our mandatory. There is something that's called consistence. This was not needed anymore because I'm using the latest version 8.29 of MySQL HeatWave. So you are good to go. Once you connect and once you run this, I'm using the config file, which is which will dump the data immediately. Then I will have now the loading back to the HeatWave systems. So step number 4, it's easy. I will connect back to the MySQL HeatWave system, and I will use load dump command. Load dump command, two parameters. You need the prefix name, the one you use in the previous steps, and the location of your config file, and the bucket name, and the OCI space name. A dry run it through. This is just to run it in a dry mode. Once you are okay, you can change the dry mode to the false. Then it will run the actual loading to the MySQL Heat system. Ignore version true. This is a mandatory command because you are moving from different versions, 5.7 to the 8, so that we need to be compatible with the version 8. If you look to the output, this is the output. The tool will load to you multiple things. You can load only DDLs. You can load only data. There's many options available for these tools, but I'm using the default options where I will load everything to the MySQL systems. And you can see the chunks and how many rows processed, size of data that I have, and the average time spent when I loading the data from object storage to the MySQL HeatWave systems. The last step is to validate. Very easy. Connect to the system, show databases between two sides. You can see I migrate 3 databases Sakila, Word, employees on my demo systems in just show databases. Then you can validate your applications, connect your application to the endpoint, okay? And if you find any, let's say, missing things, you can just try to find it from the logs files, if so. Now, this is our upcoming sessions. So in the next weeks, we will have more sessions to discuss. If you are to migrate from Amazon, from Google, how to run the full stack with the HeatWave system, how to enable workload with the HeatWave as well. If you want a deep dive, we have all resources available on the HeatWave system, or even you can contact me in one-to-one session to go further and understand if you need more details on that. So these are our references. We have even a live migration. So if you consider live migrations, we do support live migrations from HeatWave system to the from Azure also to the MySQL HeatWaves. Now, this is our connections. You can have our connected, of course, and this is the coming soon, the Oracle Cloud World, and we will participate on the Oracle Cloud World for MySQL Summit on the Las Vegas. Thank you so much for attending, and I'm open for Q&A. If you have, I think we have Alex here. Any questions? I will be happy to get them as soon as you add them on the Q&A.